Salam. So Wahid have this new Shariah Everyday Account. It's like a savings account, but not really called a savings account, even though in the advert they do say that you can keep your savings in a bank or you can keep your savings in this, what do they call it? It's not Shariah savings account. It's a Shariah Everyday Account. I think they're being careful not to use the word savings. Anyway, in this video, we're just going to go through how the fund works, some benefits, some pros, some cons about the fund. But let's start with the video because everyone loves the advert. It's Mufti Bank and Mr. Khabib. Let's watch it.
You can keep your savings in a bank. You have instant access and you get this.
Or you can keep your savings with Wahid. You have instant access too, and you get this. But Habib, this one is halal.
Haram.
Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And the phone is gone.
Haram. Haram.
Habib, be gentle.
Haram.
Download Wahid now. No phones were hurt in making this advert.
Cool. So they've got the everyday Shariah account. They're saying 4.3%. We're just going to look over some things about how they explain it, some different ways that other people have explained it, and then let's just go straight in. So the FAQs about this everyday Shariah account is available on the Wahid Malaysia website because I believe that's where it's launched already. And some of the main things that they say is your returns. You can potentially earn returns up to 4.95% annually. Why would you open it? Because it's Shariah-compliant savings. You can deposit and withdraw at any time. Wonderful. How are my returns generated without interest? Your funds are not loaned out for interest. Instead, they are invested in a Shariah-compliant ETF. That's what we're going to be looking at, that Shariah-compliant ETF. And it says here the underlying ETF is KWIN ETF. And they go over what makes it halal. And there is a section which says, oh, what about options? What about options? It says here the underlying KWIN ETF uses options contracts as part of buying and selling the underlying asset to lock in a hedge for future delivery. Wonderful. So it uses options to generate this return. And we're going to look what a few people have said about options and them being Shariah compliant and what most people have said with regard to them not being Shariah compliant. So on the wahid.com website, if you go to ETFs, you can actually see a drop down and that's where it says KWIN. That's when you can read their pitch deck and their Shariah certificate. So we're going to load up their pitch deck to see what they say about it. Now there's actually two versions of this pitch deck. So this is a pitch deck done by Wahid, and here is the one done by CraneShares. And you can tell they look the same apart from one says CraneShares in the top left, the other says Wahid in the top left. And they do have some differences in them even though they're explaining the same product. So in the Wahid one, when you go down to look at how it actually works, Wahid just says it's a structured forward sale agreement, where in the KWIN document, it specifically says it goes longer put and shorter call, and that's how it starts to generate income. Now, there are some slight differences between them, and I don't think it's Wahid trying to hide how it's actually working, but maybe Wahid understands that its audience is a bit more retail, a bit less sophisticated, so they've gone for a one-step option to explain how it is. But it does seem that they're trying to avoid the mention of options because it says here, a structured forward sale agreement effected using a combination of exchange traded contracts. It's not saying option here. It doesn't say option here. It doesn't say anything about options here. So even though the strategy does use options, I wonder if it says options anywhere in the thing. It does say options a few times in the thing, but mainly in the risk disclosures down at the bottom. Yeah, it says underlying equities and options traded, but it's normally in the small print and not in the main sections about how it's making these returns on this fund. But we'll go into what options are and how they're making their money from options in a bit. Next, if we go back to the Wahid website, we can actually look at the Shariah certificate. The Shariah certificate is issued by someone called Abrahamic Finance. There you can see their logo there, Abrahamic Finance, Shariah, letter of Shariah compliance. Funny enough, a lot of people are against the use of options in terms of them being Shariah compliant or not. Most people say that they're not Shariah compliant. However, Wahid are using them in a specific method which combines them with an equity holding, which reduces the risk and therefore may make it Shariah compliant. Anyway, these Abrahamic guys have said it's halal, but Wahid don't really use Abrahamic Finance. They use the Shariah Review Bureau, and they're the ones who hand out the certificate to Wahid saying that the stuff that they do is halal or not halal. If you look at the Sharia compliance certificate given to Wahed by the Shariah Review Bureau, you will see that they just say Wahed is Sharia compliant. But they also said that this was issued on 21st of February 2024 and that this certificate is reviewed once every 12 months. So at the time of me filming this video, this certificate has been expired. So maybe Sharia Review Bureau haven't okayed their new KWIN fund. I don't know why they went with Abrahamic Finance. Abrahamic Finance are a company out of Canada, seemingly a lot smaller than the Shariah Review Bureau, and the Shariah Review Bureau seem to have disagreed with options in the past, at least. And we can see that here on this on the IFG website. Actually, somebody asked about investing in stock options, and the first answer is due to their speculative and gambling nature, which neither would technically exist with Wahed because they're using them in such a way which removes the speculation and the gambling nature. But anyway, they're considered prohibited by many scholars. Some people say they're halal, and he goes on to say who the halal ones are. Mufti Faraz Adam highlights a research paper that he's written on options, and he is probably one of the main scholars at the Shariah Review Bureau. And this piece that he wrote on the world of options, he goes down to say, this paper finds options are prohibited for two reasons: gharar and invalid subject matter. Options are prohibited because it is a form of bay' al-gharar. The option is gharar. Exercising the option is unknown and uncertain. The uncertainty of the subject matter makes it gharar. Okay, so they've said it's not Sharia compliant, which is maybe why, well, anyway, they've said that options are not Sharia compliant. They haven't said the strategy that Wahed are using is not Sharia compliant. Just made me think a little bit. I wonder if that's why they're not using the Shariah Review Bureau, and maybe that's why they've gone with Abrahamic Finance. I don't actually know for certain. But anyway, that's introduction. Let's try and find out how they actually do what they do. When you invest into a stock normally, as the stock price rises, the amount of profit you make increases, and as the stock price decreases, the amount of loss you make increases. And that's what's represented by this dotted line here. That's your payoff line. That's a standard position in a stock. Now what you can do is, if you entered into a position which was the exact opposite, which had the payoff of the exact opposite, your payoff line would effectively be nothing. You would make no money. And in effect, this is what Wahed are doing. They are constructing a synthetic short position in the stock using options to thereby remove the risk of the stock price going up and down. And this line where it says you're not making any return, technically it should be a little bit higher because they are making some return, and we'll see where that possible areas of return can come from. So they're constructing with options, and you can take a few different positions in options: a long put, a long call, a short put. Now it says on the KWIN website here, it says here that the strategy is exercised using a long put and a short call. Now, you know, I could go into the details of how a long put and a short call works, but I'm going to leave that for another video for someone else to explain. But this is a long put and a short call, and what we're concerned about is the payoff line. With a long put, you effectively lose money initially because you have to pay for it. With a short call, you make money initially because you sell it. So that's one area where they could be making money on the difference between the price of the call and the price of the put. If they're selling the calls higher than the puts, they're making money there. When you combine these two strategies together and look at the payoff line it would have, this is effectively the payoff line it would have. These are the two black lines of the two combined option contracts, and the green is now the payoff line. And if we just translate that back to our initial graph, you'll see that's how I effectively got the red line, the small dotted red line, and then when you combine it with a long option, with a long stock position, which is what Wahed are doing, that's how you get back to the flat line with, in theory, no risk. But obviously that is just in theory because it doesn't quite work like that. Now, what's actually going on here is Wahed are constructing a short futures position in the stock, and the futures price is actually dependent on the rate of interest. And now if we look at just some formulas where you are pricing the price of puts and the price of calls, what we can effectively see is that through the combination of their position, they are making a future. But when they're shorting the future, one of the things that they'll be collecting is the rate of, not really correct to call it the rate of interest, the risk-free rate, some might call it, the rate that bonds are going to pay. But anyway, it is generally priced off interest. And futures work in that all a future is that you are agreeing to do something in the future. So you can buy the stock of Nvidia today, or you can agree to buy it in the future. And say if they were the same price, it would always make sense to buy it in the future, because if it's the same price, you don't have to make the initial outlay of cash today to buy it at a price of 100. You can just hold on to that cash for, say, let's say a year. You can hold on to that cash for a year, and make interest on it, and then buy the stock of Nvidia 1 year in the future at the same price you were going to buy it today. So it would always make more sense to buy a stock in the future if the futures price was the same as the current price of the stock. Now, there are some small caveats around that, like if the stock was paying off dividends, but let's just assume the stock is not paying dividends. And you can see that with here I've got Nvidia, and I've got some futures prices for Nvidia on this chart here, and you can see the top price is effectively the spot price for Nvidia. This is the bid prices off the price, so somewhere in the middle we're looking at 17,900. You can see it is a March 26 contract, and this is a June 26 contract. This one is higher, this one is even higher, and if you work out how much higher they are, it's effectively by the rate of interest if you annualize it based on how far these dates are from today. So what you could in theory do is you could buy this and sell this, and then in effect you'd be making the difference between them. That is effectively one of the ways that Wahed are making money from this position, captivating the time value of money, which is implied by the risk-free rate which exists in futures contracts. They're just constructing it using options. Now, I pulled up a stock chart of Nvidia here, and I've also looked at the options, and I considered going into how you can actually construct this position, going into some long puts and some short calls, but it all got a little bit complicated. And I don't really know if it's necessary to go into it in that much detail, but I'm hoping just to convey to you the idea of what Wahed are generally doing here. They are taking a long stock position and an effective short position in the stock using that structured forward sale agreement to get to that profit. One thing that you should realize is that the stocks that Wahed are invested into are dollar-based stocks, and the options are also dollar-based. So that return that you're going to make is a dollar-based return. Now, if the exchange rate between whatever country you're living in, here for us in the UK, it's pound sterling, and whatever currency they have in the US, well, they have dollars in the US, and the exchange rate between the moves, your return could be amplified or it could be severely reduced. So it's not really a safe place to keep your money. Sukuk funds also suffer from this issue that you are exposed to FX rate movements. However, if you understand the risk of FX rate movements, I guess it might be all right. There was a fund in the US, a hedge fund in the US called Long-Term Capital Management, and it would do not this exact strategy, but similar strategies where they find small areas of arbitrage within the market and they try and make small amounts of money. And that's effectively what Wahed is trying to do. They're trying to make small amounts of money by looking at option prices, trying to exploit some difference between the call price and the put price, and trying to make a bit of money there. Anyway, Long-Term Capital Management were doing that, but they combined whatever they were doing with a lot of leverage, and in the end that company blew up. I'm not saying that Wahed are going to blow up. I'm just saying that there exists opportunities in the market to make a small amount of money by combining different derivative contracts to try and hedge in what they call in the industry an arbitrage profit, a kind of like a riskless profit, even though there is going to be risk, but it's just a small amount of risk. Obviously, the big difference between what Wahed are doing and what Long-Term Capital Management are doing, I would recommend you to go and read up about Long-Term Capital Management. A big difference between what they're doing is Wahed is not taking on any leverage, so I don't expect this strategy to blow up. All I'm concerned about is if they're really going to make their stated level of return, especially during times of market stress, because during times of market stress, liquidity just reduces a lot. And it seems like what this fund are going to be doing, they're going to be entering into a lot of contracts using options, buying and selling stocks, trying to offset that risk. And it just can be difficult when liquidity in the market drops, and liquidity can dry up really, really fast during periods of market stress. So I'm interested to see how it goes. I'm going to chuck a load of money into it. I'm not going to use it as a savings account, that's for sure, because I've got that currency risk and I don't want that currency risk. But to try it out, I'll probably try it out, but I need to see a few years of track record. And the big thing for me is I want to see how it does during a period of market turbulence, see if they can maintain the strategy or not. With regard to it being Sharia compliant, I always say I'm not a mufti, I'm not a scholar. I have a few qualifications in Islamic finance, but I'm not going to be able to say if something should be halal or not. Maybe I was wrong about the whole Sharia certificate thing. Maybe they're okay with, maybe Shariah Review Bureau are okay with this contract, but they were just too expensive. Who knows? Just interesting nonetheless. If you invest into the KWIN fund, let me know what you think. And if you had any thoughts on this video, also let me know what you think. I know it's quite technical, Maybe we get even more technical later on. But I think that's a good enough initial overview for now. Thanks. Assalamu alaikum.